In this video, we'll talk about how to model the legs for a character. So this is part 4 in the character modeling tutorial video series. And what we're going to do is expand upon what we've learned about so far of extruding out of the base model. Now, one thing we did with the arms is we had 4 faces to be able to create a more rounded form. But with each leg, we only have 2 faces. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an edge loop down the center here to be able to have 4 faces for each leg. There's a lot of ways we can do this. We can use the connect tool, but the easiest way, in my point of view, is to just use the insert edge loop tool. Underneath mesh tools, insert edge loop with symmetry on. I'm just going to click and drag to add another loop down the middle here. Now that face is pretty flat, so one thing we can do is get our scale tool and more from a top view, scale it out in that direction a little bit, so that kind of rounds off the front and even the back of the character a little bit more. So that way it's just not a flat edge there. Alright, so what we're going to do is extrude these 4 faces out, but with symmetry on, it's going to connect it to the other side. What we'd rather have it do is pull each leg out 4 faces at a time. So I'm actually going to turn off symmetry mode, and then I'm just going to select these 4 faces. Okay. So when I extrude this and I get my move tool, move it down and out a little bit, now I'm going to have an individual leg, but it did not affect the other side. So what I'm going to do first is actually just come in here and try to make this a little bit more round of a form. Go. We'll straighten this line up a little bit. All right. But the issue is it only is affecting one side of the body. So we need to delete half of the geometry and then come back and mirror it over. So what I'm going to do is select this right side of the character's body all the way to the center line. Go back to my perspective view, so I was in the front view so that it selects just half of the body there. Make sure over the top we just have those selected, so we missed a couple. There we go. So I'm going to select those faces and hit the delete key. Okay, so we have half of a leg, really half the whole body here. I'm going to put it back in object mode. We need to make sure that pivot is in the center there. So from the front view now, we need to make sure that pivot point is still in the middle, which it is. And we're going to use the mirror tool. So if I go to mesh, mirror, and we go to the box beside it, I need to make sure I'm on the right axis. So yes, on the x-axis, this is the positive side. So if I move it this way, it's a positive value. So we'll undo it to put it back at 0. So I need to mirror it over to the negative direction. So I'm actually going to leave everything as default. Mirror axis x, mirror direction negative. Do a mirror. So that mirrors it over properly to the other side. And now we actually have 2 different legs that are coming out. Okay, so we're going to go back to the modeling toolkit and turn back on object X symmetry. And then now when I come down, I have 2 different legs that are separated. Okay. So for this, for the leg, we're going to use the front and side view. Before I do anything else, I'm going to come and kind of move some of these vertices around, scale them out some, so that way it matches my drawing. Go, kind of move these in the middle. All right, that looks pretty good. And then now we can go to face mode and start extruding out. So it's also really thick from the front view. So we'll kind of move it back. And then maybe the area right there, we'll move that back. We're going to eventually need some more edge loops in this middle torso area, but we're going to do legs first and then come back and add some more loops later. Alright, so I've already got the legs positioned in a point of view where the hip, the knee, and the ankle already have a little bit of a forward bend. After I get the leg modeled, we're going to exaggerate that a little more, which is going to be important once we get to rigging. So we're also going to come back and make our adjustments for the arms later to have a forward bend for the elbow. All right, so with the extrude tool, I'm extrude, hit W to get back in the move tool, move it down, and the perspective view will scale a little bit to get the right scale, and then we will move everything in so that it faces everything. I'm also going to kind of rotate a little bit so I can follow the angle of the leg. All right, so let's do it again, extrude, the move tool, and it's really the same tools again that we talked about earlier. Extrude, move, rotate, and scale. Okay. All right, so I'm getting to the knee. We're gonna do the same thing we did for the elbow, which was 4 edge loops. So same thing for the knee. We're gonna do 4 edge loops around the knee. Okay, so there we go. We're gonna start to rotate back towards the calf area. All right, so we're gonna extrude again. Do a little bit of scaling there. All right, and one more. There we go, that's pretty good. So those 4 edge loops kind of follow down the length. We'll move it back this way a little bit. Actually go to the edge loop above that. Rotate this back a little bit as well. There we go. All right, so 4 edge loops around the knee. We can come back and adjust positions and everything later. Let's do extrude, and we're gonna work our way around the calf. So we're gonna start rotating back the opposite way. There we go. The key thing from a animation standpoint is to make sure that the geometry follows the motion of the body. So as we extrude, we're going to keep rotating the joints around. So if I get down here, I can see I'm not really following the angles of my drawing, so I can scale. Then I can move up to edge loops above that, scale it out, move it, and rotate. Scale it out a little bit more, kind of move this one that way a little bit more so knee's angled. There we go. So I do want to make sure for the front and side view, everything kind of follows in suit there. All right, so following down the length, now we're getting to a point where the calf or shin starts to taper back down. Say from the red view or x-axis. Go, we'll extrude. So this character, according to the drawing, has a much more elongated lower leg. Not too crazy, but it is something we're going to try to exaggerate some features, but still have rough human proportions. All right, so here's the ankle. We want to extrude around the ankle instead of down and then out. So we can start to scale out a little bit more for the joints, the bones in the ankle. All right, so when I do extrude, I'm really going to be looking at my front view, my side view here. So get the move tool, and we'll go back to the perspective view, rotate, and start to scale. Go, so it follows the ankle around. So we'll extrude, we'll move it, rotate it, and scale again. And move it in place. So we're working our way around the ankle. Good, maybe not that much there. There you go. All right, we'll do another one. This is now going to get to the arch of the foot. So we'll keep rolling around. And I will need to go back and do some scaling because in the perspective view, it's not going to quite look proper. You can see it kind of from the front view there. Come back and make adjustments to it later, but we're going to try to get the overall foot shape. Oops. There you go. So get that arch started. And then we'll come back and adjust this for the scale of the side of it. Right. Pull it out there. I'm not going to follow my drawing exactly here. So we're going to need a couple of joints for the base of the toes, which will be about right here. Scale in just a little bit. Oh, that's too much. Maybe 3 joints there. That should work pretty good. And then now the last one is for the toes. So if you're doing individual toes, then we can start to taper in, but I'm just going to do like a scared wearing shoes or something like that. We'll do one final extrude and scale that down some. And that'll be the end of the toes there, something like that. All right, so now we can go in like to the perspective view and start to scale some. Take from the side view and kind of pull these down. Okay, we can start to take some of these edge loops and kind of scale them out some. There you go. Really for the toe point of view, they'll be kind of angled out some, something like this. There we go. Now we can take some of these and kind of blend the middle areas back a little bit. Yeah, start to look like a foot a little bit more. We can take like this bottom loop and like flatten that a little more and move it up. There you go. It's looking a little better. At least a starting point for the foot. Right. The key thing there is the loop goes around. Right, so one final thing with the legs before we start to add some more detail is the pointed crotch is not very natural. So we're going to have to correct that. We're going to convert this into horizontal and vertical loops. So to do that, I'm going to get that insert edge loop tool again. And I'm going to create an edge loop once again just to the in and outside of the center line. So right there. But I don't want this loop to go throughout the entire leg. So I want this to go from the head and stop at the crotch and then follow down the length of the crotch. So what I'm going to do from the front view is deselect the edges from the head down to the crotch so that I just have my edges on my legs selected. Hold down Control and click Delete. Control deleting deletes the edges and the vertices there. Alright, so what that will do, unfortunately, is create ingons on the front and back of the character. The only time I really use multi-cut is when I need to clean up and correct edge loops so that the body moves more naturally. And this is an occasion where we need that at the center of the crotch. So with the multi-cut tool, I'm going to come in here where that edge loop meets the crotch and take that vertex, and I'm going to create a diagonal line on the leg, and I'm going to work my way towards the back of the leg. And then from the opposite side, I'm going to connect that to the other vertex. Let's hit enter. All right. So that will pull that loop down into the crotch area instead of down the leg. Now what we did was create a triangle, then another ingon. But the next thing we're going to do is go back to the front of the character, is take the target weld and target weld the top vertex of that triangle down to the bottom one. Okay. And that's going to create quads all the way around. Looks a little weird. We're going to correct the position here in a minute. Let's go to the back of the body and take that top vertex of the triangle, target weld that, drag down to the bottom vertex. That creates quads all the way around again. Now, the only other thing we need to do is just come in here to those vertices on the leg in the middle there and move them out and up a little bit. And now we have a more proper crotch and back of the leg, or back of the butt area of the character, where loops can move from the top to the bottom and then also from the sides. So from the front view, we're going to come in and make a couple adjustments to this top edge loop. We're going to move that all the way up here. This is going to be relatively where the hip is. Something like that. Maybe a little higher. Okay. Okay. And then we're going to do Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop, and add a couple of loops here. So here's really where the 4 edge loops around the torso come into play. So that way the leg can bend more naturally. While we're at it, we can go ahead and add another loop here that can add some more definition. Maybe 2 more loops here. Add some more definition to that area. where the crotch is and the butt, because both those areas are relatively flat right now. So I can move this out, take some of these, let's go to vertex mode, move it out to be able to build a more natural like butt area on the character. There's this way some, this way. Move it up a little bit more. We can always add more loops later. Well, that'll start to get a little bit more natural of a form. We can pull this point out a little bit more. Point out. There we go. We can blend this out a little bit more. All right, so that's how we can block out the entire body. We haven't done smaller features like the fingers or anything, or facial features, but that's how we can extrude out the legs and correct some areas by adding proper loops in here. All right, that'll end up this video. Next video, we'll talk about softening the edges, adding more loops where we need to, and getting to a point where we can start to add more fine-tuned detail to the character.